That's what I want women to just own and claim. Like, this is our time of life to truly shine. We have been impactful in our growing and striving years. We've been really impactful in the service of our families, our companies, our communities. We've been really impactful. And now is the time, all of that energy that we've poured into those things outside of us, to pour that energy into ourselves. And the one thing I always remind women is, this does not mean that you are ditching everybody else.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of Power Purpose Play. We are a global platform which is dedicated to advancing the personal growth and inner power of women in midlife. If you're new to our podcast, our goal is to help you rediscover yourself as you move forward in the next chapter of your life. To that end, I interview incredible women every week who will serve as inspiration to you and who will give you examples of how to face the obstacles in your way and take that first step towards rediscovery. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Rene Washington. Rene is a master certified life coach, a podcast host, an author, and a midlife maven. She's known for her straight, no chaser style and for successfully coaching women through navigating major life transitions and breaking through what's blocking them from their goals and dreams. In 2020, she established Career Triage to help women in career transition align their next steps with their true passions in life. More than a career transition strategist, Rene also works with women to transform their grief after major loss and renew their determination and fire for life. So welcome to the show, Rene. We obviously have a lot in common, so I'm really excited to dive right in. How are you today?
Oh, I am wonderful. I'm getting to talk to you, so this is great.
Fantastic. It's a great way to start the day.
It is.
So, Rene, I just wanted to dive right in. Just in your introduction, I said you define yourself as a midlife maven. Firstly, tell us what that is. And then before you do that, maybe tell us a little bit about your reinvention story, perhaps, and how you got started and how you came to do what you're actually doing today.
Okay. All right. So, when you were talking about the transitions, I was like, oh, yes, transition.
Yeah.
It's just huge. And for me, for my story, there were 3 major transitions that I went through over a period of probably about 6 or 7 years, that each one I thought, oh my gosh, because up until that point, this happened around my mid-40s where these things started happening, these big things started happening. But up until that point, I had led a pretty good, non-eventful life from going through any kind of trauma perspective, that life had been really good. And I was the go-to person to listen to everybody else's big traumas and that type of thing. And kind of was feeling a little guilty about that. Like, why am I not suffering? You could think,
yes. It's like something, the shoe's going to drop or something.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I was 45, I had a mini stroke.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yes. And it happened at work. It started when I was getting prepared to go to work. And that morning I was married, but I happened to be at home by myself that morning. And so I noticed a little something going on, but just kind of brushed it away. drove myself to work, called a girlfriend to tell her something, couldn't get the words out. And it's still not clicking for me that I knew something wasn't right, but it wasn't escalated to like, oh, danger, danger.
Wow.
So I get to work, and long story short, I end up in the health office, and the nurse is telling me, you're in the midst of having a major stroke. We're taking you to the hospital by ambulance. And by the time I got to the health office, I started feeling fine again. And I was like, oh no, I don't need to go to the hospital. Don't put me in an ambulance. She's like, no, you're going. And I ended up being in the hospital for 5 days. And
thank goodness for her, right?
Yeah. I tell her, yes, I'm retired now, but yeah, she is my guiding angel. I still am so grateful for her that she knew what was going on. And that was the first thing. And what that came to tell me when I was laying on the gurney, because I had been married for about 20 years, and my marriage had been a good marriage. But the past few years, I just started feeling all out of sorts about my marriage, my job, and I couldn't understand what was going on. And I was suffering in silence because I don't have anything to complain about, right? So I was suffering in silence. I probably went for a year with very little sleep. I mean, I was not doing well, but I was acting like I'm still pushing through, carrying on, doing what I have to do. Mm-hmm. And when I had the mini stroke, because I did not have any triggers for that. I wasn't diabetic, wasn't overweight. They could not tell me why I had that stroke.
That's so interesting. Okay.
So I knew that it was stress connected. That was,
Sure.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks before that, when I had gone for my annual GYN appointment, and that was the first time I expressed to somebody. I told my doctor, I said, I want to leave my marriage and I want to quit my job. And I'm 20 years on both. And she was like, well, let me just check. And she came back and told me that I was in full-blown menopause at 45. Mm-hmm. So those two things happening right together. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is just something I'll get through. I'll get past this. I'll calm down. I'll fall back in love with my husband. I'll fall back in love with my job. But when I had the stroke, it just kind of changed everything for me. And I was like, okay, you have got to make a decision about this is real. This is impacting you. This is your life. Mm-hmm. So for the next year, I went to different counseling interventions. I tried to save the marriage. And what I realized, Kavita, is that we can be caught up in life we think we are in control.
Right.
And we are directing things. Sometimes life moves us. And what I realized is that, yes, I had a good marriage, but the paradigm that our marriage was resting on shifted because the dynamic was, I was kind of the control. I kind of directed things, and he was good with that. That worked for him, but it became a burden for me. Mm. And I realized that he was who he was. I was changing. I didn't seek to change, but here it was. I had changed, and I could no longer carry that weight. And I was this good Christian girl, right?
Right.
You're not being beaten or abused. You don't have a reason to get divorced. And that was a shift for me also in my relationship with God, because I really had to connect to God. It was me and God. My friends, I had people telling me, God is not the author of divorce and all that kind of stuff. And okay, yes, but here I am. And so I really became much stronger in my faith, because then I had been prayerful anyway, praying for it to shift, and it didn't. So I was like, okay, God, if I'm going to walk this path, and if you need to turn me or send me back, then I will go back. But if you keep clearing the path, I'm going to keep moving forward. And that's pretty much what happened. And I ended up a year later, I did leave the marriage and ended up getting divorced. Well, I was also going through burnout in my job, in my career.
What were you doing? Rene?
I was corporate HR. I ran the management training program for a major health insurance company. And so I'm coaching and developing people and miserable, really good at it, but miserable and praying. Well, when I get divorced, you got to eat. So you got to keep this job. So,
Right.
so that fueled me for a little while longer, but then I had to circle back around to facing that change too. And I was 2 years away from being able to officially retire and begging and pleading God to let me hang. Mm-hmm. Just let me feel good about it for 2 more years. But I mean, I was driving into the parking lot and I was crying before I got out of the car, that kind of stuff. And I would just pray. And this was some years after my divorce. And so I got divorced in 2006. Then my mom died in 2011. That was the third big shift for me because I'm a mama's girl. I still am a mama's girl. And it was unexpected. My mom died of a pulmonary embolism. Oh, it just out of the blue, just rocked our entire worlds. And that was the most, I thought my divorce was the most traumatic thing. No, I thought that stroke was when my mother died, I didn't want to be here anymore. I did not want to be here anymore. I just couldn't imagine being in the world without her. It was too soon. She was 74, but she was a young 74. Everybody was shocked that my mom was gone. And so all of that came to me from the perspective of what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And who are you going to allow to dictate what you do with the rest of your life? Because I realized that with my job, the criteria for retirement had changed 3 times during my tenure there. One day it hit me that they have moved this needle and you are jumping to this, you're dancing to their tune. You get to decide when you leave. And by then I was in a relationship with someone, and I had a fiance. And I said to him, I just keep praying. I don't understand why God is not answering my prayers with this job thing. And he said, maybe God is packing your bags. And when he said that, it was like, wow.
Yeah. Maybe he was a messenger.
Yeah. And I was sitting in my office after that, and I had been keeping this list, what you love about this job, what you hate about this job. And let me tell you, when I tell you that it was a Blue Cross health insurance plan, and I bled blue for me, my friends like, you bleed blue, girl. I mean, I was blue. Yeah, I was in for many, many years. But things have a shelf life. Things have a season. And forever is so relative. And after my mom died, I realized how arbitrary life was because I started paying attention to who lived and who died. And I used to, when I do speaking events and things, I would say that, look at the Rolling Stones. Yeah. They've had hard living lives, druggy lives and all that, and they're still rocking it out. Right. And one of them recently has died, so I can't use them as an example anymore. But you look at people that you think should be dead and they are not. And then there are people that, and so I was like, life is just arbitrary. We really don't know who's living. So all we know is that in this moment, I'm here. What are you going to do at that time? And when I was looking at that list, and I realized there are 100 people who would be gladly sit in this office. Yeah. This isn't about the company. This is about me. I have shifted. I have changed. And it's time for me to make a decision about that. So I left 2 years before official retirement.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm not a gambler, for real gambler. So I did go talk to my financial planner, and I had been talking to him for a few years, and he would just say, no, you need to stay. No, and so this time when I went, I was like, I don't care what he says. I'm out. But I went in there and he said, oh yeah, your pension's good. If you want to leave, you can leave. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what?
That's great.
No, but I left Kavita not knowing what was next. See, that's the thing. I didn't really, I had a plan to keep eating, but beyond that, I didn't have a plan.
I just want to I have to interject because I just love everything you're saying because it's so true that I don't know. And I've seen it over and over again. I'm sure you have, is that when it's around 45 something. And it's like the storm of things that happen, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned it. You mentioned that firstly with the stroke and then your feelings with your marriage and then
Yes.
your career. And it's kind of like this little sign, a voice in your soul that's telling you that things are shifting, and those are transitions. And often we need a trigger, like in your case, the stroke, that makes you wake up. And my thing is that if we try and take action before those triggers actually happen, what would happen then?
I know, right?
Right.
If we start listening to the whispers, because I realized the dissolution of my marriage was a shock to me. But when I was able to look back, I could see little signs. Oh, that I had just ignored. I read this book about menopause, and the biggest lesson I got from it was that because we as women typically are the nurturers, the tenders, the befrienders, the caretakers, we suppress a lot in the service of taking care of others.
Absolutely.
But when we get to the hormonal years, our hormones start shifting, and what has been suppressed starts bubbling up, and it will not be ignored. And so what has been suppressed must be addressed.
Absolutely. And what I think is that kudos for you, because a lot of women, and that's one of the main reasons I'm doing this, and I'm sure you're doing it, is that a lot of women will continue on and they won't listen to those voices or those little signs that along the way are telling them that there is more for you out there. And I love that question. He said, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? Because that is such an important question, because we do have so much ahead of us.
Exactly. Right? We're not dead. We still have a lot of life. And we a lot of times are living lives that have a lot of obligations connected to them. And I'm not here to say, to stop doing things for people. The other lesson I got from the book was that it's not necessarily that you're going to leave all of your relationships, but your relationships have to be renegotiated. And that's not just with a spouse. It can be with your children, with friends, with everybody, that these relationships, because you are changing, and people have to understand that there's a different you to be connected to now. And so the people that are in your lives, are they even able? And that's what I realized about my husband, is that he was a good man. I don't denigrate my ex-husband, but he was who he was. He was not able to make that shift and change.
Right.
And so in the renegotiation, some people you're able, like I had one of my clients is a good girlfriend. And when she had two children, when the youngest one was about to enter her senior year of high school, she renegotiated her relationship with her children to say, I'm starting to focus more now on me. I've been there for you all these years. She missed a lot of friend things because her children were doing things.
Right.
Said, now this is my time. And so I've raised you, I've taught you, you know what to do. And now it's time for you to step up, because I am shifting out of some of this, being the overseer of everything. And
funny you say that. It's funny you say that. It's my time now, because that's the name of my course. The course I've developed is called It's My Time Now.
Yeah.
And it's not a selfish thing.
It's not.
It's giving yourself more time and more ability to really understand who you are, what you want, and what you want to do moving forward. So after this, all these three major shifts happen in your life, Rene, then what happened next?
So that first year after I retired, that's another thing. I looked up the word retired, and it also is simply that you work someplace, and when you leave, you are retired. And so that was important for me too, because again, it was about self-defining. And so when I retired, that first year, I just had a good time. I was involved I love the arts, and I was involved with the local museum, and did a lot of art trips, traveling around, going to see art exhibits, which was important because I have been a supporter of the arts most of my life. And I always saw it from that's what they do. They are the artists. I'm not creative. They are the creatives. And I realized that we are all creatives. And so I started looking at it from life design, Frida Kahlo is one of I just love her, the artist Frida Kahlo.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yes, and she has a quote about, I paint my own reality.
Yeah. So it sounded like you were exploring your passions after you'd explored your passions, and because you probably hadn't really explored them before that, right?
I've been somebody who I enjoy life and have always enjoyed life, but it was just more like I'm going to work and have a good time kind of thing. It wasn't really connected to some bigger mission. And so in that, people in the midst of all that, people continued to call me for coaching. And I had not thought about starting a coaching business, but I had been interested in exploring life coaching. I had followed a lot of life coaches over the years and had been interested in that. And so I ended up going to Martha Beck's life coach certification program.
Right.
And still was not planning to start a business. I was just like, well, I'll just keep my skills up and see what happens. And what happened was I ended up starting a business and eventually figured out who I wanted to work with. When I was in corporate, I worked with whoever they sent me, men, women. But now it's like, oh, now I get to choose who I work with. And so that's when I focused on working with women in midlife. I'll have men call me or men ask me, why don't you coach men? Because I don't want to.
Yeah. Good for you. Exactly. So that's wonderful. And so that I can completely see the kind of the trails that you followed. And so tell me why you're so passionate about women over 50 living their best lives. Like, why is it so important to you?
I'm sitting here talking to an amazing woman.
Well, thank you.
And I meet amazing women all the time. And I truly believe that we should be running the world. And not in that, oh, let the men think they got it. No, like full on, we should be running the world. They've been running it for thousands of years. And I just think that a lot of things that we bring to the table, I am a huge believer in connection and collaboration. And these are strong skills that women have. And I think our friendships and all the ways we connect, I think it's kind of, oh, that's cute kind of thing. No, it's very powerful. That's how we get shit done. Yeah. This is how we get things done, through working together.
Absolutely.
And so I just believe that what has been kind of dimmed down and dumbed down for us, that is our superpower. Those are our superpowers. And that we have so much and when we reach these midlife years, we are full on in our wisdom years, and science shows that men typically during these years, they start to kind of go into that nesting, let me just come home kind of thing. And women, we're like, no, we're ready to go.
We're ready to conquer the world. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. My husband is like, work? Why are you still working? He's retired and he's like...
Well, similar to my story. I mean, I was in the corporate world like you for 25 years. And then at the 58, it started earlier than that, but it took me 3 years to leave. And it's like, well, you have it so good. Why? My husband's like, okay, if you want to. Sure. And it's true. It's true. We have, and that's really so important for women, I think, is to realize the great potential they have. And just on that, when I started on this route, I kept on coming across the words midlife crisis.
Yes.
And I hate those words.
I know.
It's an opportunity, in my opinion. But what about you? What are your thoughts on that?
The same. You asked about the midlife maven, and maven, it just means that you're an expert in the thing. That's what I want women to just own and claim. Like, this is our time of life to truly shine. We have been impactful in our growing and striving years. We've been really impactful in the service of our families, our companies, our communities. We've been really impactful. And now is the time, all of that energy that we've poured into those things outside of us, to pour that energy into ourselves. And the one thing I always remind women is, this does not mean that you are ditching everybody else, because I haven't met the woman yet who, whatever they land on as their passion and purpose thing moving forward in these truly, I do think they're golden years, that we bring our people with us. But now we're just more intentional about who those people are.
Right.
Now it's not about, well, I should do this for such and such, or I should be on this committee, or I coached a woman who was on 30 plus committees. And when at the end of our coaching intervention, she had dropped down to 4.
Nice.
4.
Because she feels she had to please everyone.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And it opened up so much space for her, because what she really wanted to do was creative writing. And she had to wait until she quit her job and raised her children to do that. And when she opened up all that space and she saw herself, she said, oh, now I see myself. Before, I saw myself as a law dean who wants to write. She said, now I see myself as a writer who happens to be a law dean.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that just flipped everything for her. And now she gets to spend more time with her children, with doing the things she loves, the creative writing, with her husband, while still maintaining her job until she eventually does. So you don't have to leap off the building. It's a mind shift about how you see things and what you make things mean.
The shift in perspective.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Absolutely.
And the perspective, as I love what you say, is it's about going inwards.
Yes.
Let's go inwards and really find out what's inside. Let's find our true inner self, and the inner self will always give us the answers, right? Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Absolutely.
So to talk a little bit about this, you talked about 3 keys to women thriving in midlife. And can you tell us what those 3 keys are? Because we want to all know how to unlock those.
Yeah.
The key.
Yes. And the foundation of everything that we do is mindset. Get your mind right. Free your mind and your ass will follow. That's because again, what we believe about, particularly what we believe about ourselves. And so approaching that through the lens of who are you? I ask women, who are you without role or title? And that question brings women to tears because it stumps them. They have to really think. Some can't tell me who they are without role or title. I'm mom. Well, I work for, I do. No, who are you at the essence? So discovering your identity at this stage of life, because who you are changes. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And then and I know to be true that until you know who you really are at the essence of who you are, it's really hard to know what you really want, because what you want is predicated upon how you see yourself. And so finding out who you are, then what do I want? What do I really want? Not what other people are telling me I should want, not who other people telling me I should be. Who am I? What do I want? And then how do you get that? How do you get it? And allowing yourself, another thing I tell my clients is that a decision is not a life sentence. This is, to me, I do see life as a grand experiment. And these years, it's just so fun to explore and try things. Just because you decide to do this thing doesn't mean you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Sometimes we fall into things, and when we're young, and we just fall into them, and then it just continues, and we just think there's no other way out because we're, like you said, the pension, or you're stuck in retirement, and you don't see a way out, and then things happen. You have kids, you have marriages, and then it's like so this time it's like, oh my God, it's open. Everything's open. It's available.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah.
And I love the mindset thing, because obviously we're just talking about finding your inner self. And if you find your inner self and you ask your inner self, who are you? What do I want? And how do I get there? Those are
exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then you also speak about 4 journeys that every woman in midlife needs.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So I did write a book.
Oh, yes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I wrote a book called Take the Trip: 4 Journeys Every Midlife Woman Needs to Live in Purpose and Freedom.
Love it.
Freedom is my highest value because it just connects to everything. It just means that I get to choose the life that I know will support who I was put here to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so being open to experiences, being open to life, and I can't do that if I allow myself to be locked down into what other people's priorities.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I wrote the book, Take the Trip, and the Take the Trip came from 2 experiences that I had. One was just going into an optical shop. I love eyeglasses and I have a lot of them. And so I went to my favorite optical shop, and there was a woman there who was trying on glasses. She had a black pair in her hand and she had a red pair on. And I said, "Ooh, get the red pair of glasses." I didn't know her from anybody, but they just look cute on her.
Yeah.
And she said, "Really? You think I should?" She said, I think they're kind of loud. I don't know what my friends will say. I said, they're going to say you look wonderful. And she started talking to me and she said, I should probably get the red glasses because she said, they do make me feel differently. And she said, I used to be somebody who traveled and I did all these things and I quit doing that. And now I want to start doing that again. Nice. I said, that's why you need to get the red glasses. And then I went on a trip to Lisbon by myself. I had wanted on my little bucket list was to take a trip to Europe solo. I've traveled, but had not traveled solo out of the country. And so my husband and I were supposed to go, then he couldn't. And I almost canceled the trip. And I said, no, this is what you wanted. Go. Mm-hmm. And I went, and it was a wonderful 5 days. And nice. While I was there, I was like, why have you not done this before? Because I was afraid. Because society just teaches us to be afraid. There's just, I'm kind of a news junkie, and there's always something to be afraid of, right? And so those 2 experiences led me to writing this book, because the first trip that we do need to take is in our minds. I couldn't have gone to Lisbon without wrapping my mind around the possibility of it and my ability to do it, even afraid. Mm-hmm. That was, I had to get the mindset to get myself there. And then to be open to enjoy it as a life-altering experience. And so I wrote the book. And so the 4 journeys are the journey to surrender, the journey to trusting yourself, the journey to loving yourself, and the journey to passion. And I speak about it through my experiences of taking myself through those processes. And surrender for me as a woman of faith is that, yes, we get up, we do things every day, but ultimately for me, God is in control, and I am here to do my part and then leave the hard stuff to God. Mm-hmm. And so to stop trying to orchestrate every little thing and to trust that I'm going to end up exactly where I need to be, like here talking with you. So
I love that, because we often try to control things, and we don't realize that I believe a lot of the energy in the universe, and that we all operated at different energy levels and states. And that's what my training is. And if we just kind of surrender and not worry about the outcome so much, but really do inspired action to what our goals are, if we vision that, and then things will align.
I agree.
I think it's similar to what you mentioned about surrender. Mm-hmm. So I love those: surrender, trust, loving yourself, and passion. Fantastic. Yes. I also want to ask, I'm curious, because you did these different leaps. You were courageous to leave your job and all these other things that you did, going on a trip by yourself and all that. And often it's about courage and confidence. True. And how does one get that? How does one develop that confidence? And
I love that question. I love that question, because what I've learned is that confidence is a lagging indicator. We have leading indicators and lagging indicators. And so what we tell ourselves is that we have to feel confident before we do the thing. But what's true is you do the thing And that builds your confidence. So yes, I mean, I really was really scared taking that trip to Lisbon, but I now live by the mantra to do it afraid. Don't let fear be the reason that you don't do things. We are programmed to be afraid. It's in our DNA to be afraid because it's a self-protective mechanism. And I'm sure you're aware that goes all the way back to the cave days when there were lion, tigers, and bears around every corner. And so you really could be eaten alive. Now, in the world that most of us live in, we don't have those kinds of daily dangers. But so what we do is we extrapolate that to normal stressors of life. So if you are still working for a company or for someone else, and your boss sends you an email and says, I need to see you in 30 minutes, be in my office. What do? We start freaking out. Like, what did I do? Well, what is this about? Well, oh my God, we think the worst thing. Or if you have your spouse or your children, they're supposed to be home at a certain time and they're 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
The brain starts clicking like, okay, where are they?
Yeah.
We text, we don't get a response. We call, we don't. Oh, and I mean, I have buried so many people in my life over stuff like that because you just start thinking all the worst things. Yeah. But that's how we're coded to do. And so being aware of that is how you can dial yourself out of that spiral and ask yourself, what's really true? Yeah. What's really real? So that there's the acronym for fear that I love, false evidence appearing real.
That's great.
False evidence appearing real. So whether it's taking a subway in New York City or flying to Lisbon, yes, I have some trepidation about that, but I'm not going to let that stop me from doing it until I have real evidence that I shouldn't do it. Like, okay, we were shut down in COVID, right? I didn't get on a plane and go to Lisbon in the midst of the height of COVID. Yeah. Because that was real. But a few weeks ago, I went to New York City because now there was a path for me to do that. I'm fully vaccinated, boosted. New York City has protocols in place that made me feel comfortable. So ask yourself, what's really real? This is how you build confidence, is by taking tiny steps, action steps, do things.
I love that. I love that when you said confidence is a lagging indicator. That's amazing. Yeah, that's really great. And those are great tips and great examples. False evidence appearing real. Awesome. I love acronyms.
I did too. Alliteration and acronyms. Those are my jams.
So there's so many things that we can talk about because I feel like we can talk for a long time. And in terms of like, my business is called Power Purpose Play.
I love that. Yeah.
Thank you. And the purpose part, often people think that has to be a grand purpose, or it's like,
true.
What is how do you tell your clients, or how do you go about helping them, especially at this stage of life, in this transition stage, helping them find their purpose?
Yeah.
I know that you've talked a lot about your faith, and I think that, and we talked a little bit about listening to your inner side. And that's how I did it. Like internally, but just wondering if there's any other ways or methods that you
absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. Yeah, I do believe in listening to those nudges and following them. And you're right also about, it doesn't have to be some grand thing. I had a client who was a loss admin for a law firm, and she was feeling kind of burnout in that job. She also was feeling burnout in her personal life because she was everybody's doormat. She had a grown son still living with her. She was the woman in her church who everybody came to for everything. And she was just, your course, when is it going to be my time? Was her question. And when we, at the end of that coaching intervention, which even surprised me because she was misaccommodating, but we started with little things like she got the son out of the house, which may seem like a big thing to some people, but she did get him out. But even spending an evening at home alone, just doing whatever she wanted to do. And her test was somebody called her to babysit their child. And people call and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so because we will tend to say nothing if it's not something specific. And
how about just being, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so she had to walk herself through that, what we had worked through. And she told the woman no. She said, I can't do it. And she said, I had planned to just stay home, watch some TV.
And be.
Yeah. And she said,
exactly.
and I said, well, what happened with that woman? She said, she found somebody else at that. I said, exactly. Exactly. A few months after we ended our coaching, she sent me a message saying, she said, I just can't tell you how much my life has changed. I'm so grateful. She quit her job and moved 5 states away because what she really wanted to do was be near her grandchildren. She had another son who had grandchildren in another state, and that's what she wanted to do. So she found another job in that state so she could be near her grandchildren. That was her purpose.
Nice.
So it doesn't have to be that you're starting. I've coached women who have started foundations, started businesses, written books, all kinds of things. But it can be something that I knew a woman when I was growing up, and she would say, I just want to sit on my porch and watch the cars go by.
That's wonderful. Like that's right? What I'm saying. So we always feel like we have to do. And then it's like, sometimes, and it's ingrained in us because we always have to be busy. And it's like, well, maybe my purpose right now is to just kind of enjoy life. And that's part of the play. That's why I'd have play in my title, because it's play means you can enjoy life, but you can also just sit back and watch the cars go by, right? If you want to. And fantastic. So you also have, Rene, you have a podcast as well. And it's called the Midlife Remix.
Yes.
So why do you call it the remix, and why do you think midlife needs a remix?
Oh, yes, because that speaks to, as we talked about earlier, that life is not static, that we can keep mixing it up. And I love your focus on play. Life should be enjoyable. It should be fun. And this is the time for us to try different things and just enjoy. And so the Midlife Remix is about doing that. What's got you curious? What's interesting you? What have you wanted to try or wanted to do? This is the time to do it. If not now, because you say this, if not now, when?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I say that a lot.
Yeah. And I am so on board with that. So yes, so the Midlife Remix, season 1 is on all the platforms, and season 2 will be coming out in January. I'm calling that the interview series because I'm going to be interviewing amazing women. And as I said, I want you to come on the show too.
Oh, I'd be honored. Yes.
And so, so I love that. I just really want women at this stage of life to not believe that it's too late. That's a lie. It's not too late. And I see so many examples of women. And I even saw a man this past week who is in his 80s, and he's a pole jumper. This setting records as a pole jumper in his 80s.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a pole jumper in high school, wasn't really that good in high school. And in his 60s, he picked it up again.
It's never too late. If not now, when? If not now, when, right? Fantastic. I love that. It's remix tape. It reminds me of the remix tapes that we had when we were younger, right? And so, mix it up. That's amazing. Rene, I love your energy, and I love everything that you've done, and the fact that you've learned from your life, and that you've put whatever you've done and the transitions you faced, and those 3 big things that happened, and you move forward, and you now are teaching other women to live life to their fullest, and to take action, and not to be fearful, and to just jump right in. And I think that's all near and dear to my heart. So I just think it's wonderful. The work you're doing is very important. Perhaps you can tell our audience where we can find you. I'll have the link of your book as well, and your podcast in the notes. Yes. But for just briefly, where we can
get on my newsletter. It's the midliferemix.life. Okay. The midliferemix.life will connect you to getting on my newsletter, so you can keep up with the wonderful things we're doing in that community. So.
Fantastic. And I look forward to hearing your podcast in the new year. I'm also starting season 2 as well in January. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you want to end with, or any comments you want to make?
I will just say, one, thank you for having me on the show, and to all the people listening, treat yourself to this gift that we've been given called life. Just treat yourself to it, and whatever it is, follow what Kavita is saying. If not now, when? Stop delaying. Live life.
Fantastic. I can't top that at all. So thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show, Rene.
Thank you.
I'm sure you enjoyed hearing from Rene as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. A true midlife maven, Rene has given us so many reasons to take this next stage in our life and run with it. As she so aptly describes, amazing women like you should be running the world. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And who are you going to allow to dictate what you're going to do with the rest of your life? 2, start listening to the whispers. What has been suppressed must be addressed. 3, your relationships have to be renegotiated with your spouse, children, friends, because you are changing. People have to understand that there's a different you to be connected to. 4, I meet amazing women all the time, and I truly believe that we should be running the world. We bring a lot to the table. Connection and collaboration are strong skills that women have, and these connections are not cute. They are very powerful. That's how we get shit done. 5, when we reach these midlife years, we're full in our wisdom years. Women are ready to conquer the world. This is our time of life to truly shine. Now is the time. All that energy that we've poured into those things outside of us, we need to pour that energy into ourselves. 6, who are you without role or title? Who are you at the essence? Discover your identity at this stage of life, because who you are changes, and that's okay. Until you know who you really are at the essence, it's really hard to know what you really want. 7, I see life as a grand experiment, and these years it's just so fun to explore and try new things. 8, confidence is a lagging indicator. We tell ourselves that we have to feel confident before we do the thing, but what's true is you do the thing, and that builds your confidence. 9, do it afraid. Don't let fear be the reason that you don't do the things. Ask yourself what's really true. The acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real. 10, what's got you curious? What interests you? What have you wanted to try or do? This is the time to do it. If not now, when? As we approach the end of the year, I hope you've taken some time to reflect on all the great things in your life and what you are really grateful for. I would love to hear your feedback on how you have enjoyed our podcast this year and what you would like to see more of for next year. I've heard loud and clear from many of you that confidence is something that you need guidance on, and our offerings next year will have a distinct focus on confidence in midlife. Our course, It's My Time Now, will help you gain the confidence in your next steps. Join the course with the links below. My personal coaching services will also do the same and help you move to the higher energy levels to tap into your true potential. Contact me for more information. Until next week, my friend, stay well and stay safe.